I saw the text right as the elevator doors were sliding shut. One line from the family group chat lit up my screen against the dim metal walls. Dinner starts at 7. Do not be late. Below it was a photo. The dining table at my parents' house, every chair taken except the one that used to be mine. Nobody had mentioned changing the date. Nobody had mentioned Christmas at all. It was already happening, without me. By the time I reached my apartment, another notification landed. A bill for $25,000. Subject line, Serena's car. No greeting, no explanation, just a due amount and a deadline. I set my keys on the counter and felt the silence of the place tighten around me. They had not asked me to come home, but somehow they still expected me to pay. My name is Riley Hart. I am 32 years old, and I grew up in a house where silence weighed more than words ever did. My father, Grant Rowan, spoke in instructions, not conversations. Short, clipped phrases, never any why behind them. My mother, Elise, floated behind him smoothing things over, softening edges, but never actually stepping between anyone. And my younger sister, Serena, was the center of gravity he chose. Everything bent around her. It had been that way as long as I could remember. When I was 11, I dragged an old computer tower out of the garage and hauled it onto the kitchen table. Dust fell in little clouds as I opened the side panel. I had no clue what I was looking at. All I knew was that the mess of wires and chips felt like a puzzle that belonged to me and me alone. I leaned over the open case, studying every piece like it was a new alphabet. Grant walked in with his coat still on. He did not ask what I was building. He did not even come closer. His eyes skimmed over the parts, then over me. Waste of time, he said, hanging his keys on the hook. Do something real. Behind him, Serena, 2 years younger and somehow already the chosen one, climbed onto a chair, sneakers kicking the rung. Dad, look what I made. She held up a drawing of a horse with a huge glittery crown. Grant smiled, ruffled her hair. That is talent, he told her. His voice never sounded like that with me. I remember resting my fingers on the motherboard like I could press my embarrassment into the plastic. Then I quietly closed the panel and carried the tower back to the garage. That was the first time I understood that whatever I loved would never be the thing he bragged about. When I turned 16, Serena got a used car for her birthday. I got a firm handshake and a reminder to be responsible. 2 months later she scraped the entire passenger side of that car along a concrete pillar in a parking garage. Grant blamed me for not teaching her how to park, even though I had never been in the car with her. Serena apologized once in the hallway, voice small and guilty. But when Dad walked in, she let the story tilt until somehow my bad influence was the problem. Letting the narrative bend around her was always easier than holding the truth steady. In high school, every science fair ribbon I brought home made Elise smile in this quiet, careful way. Then she would tuck the certificates into a drawer in her bedroom, like she was hiding something fragile that nobody else needed to see. Serena's cheer trophies, though, lined the hallway. Guests saw them the second they stepped inside. Compliments always flowed in that direction. I learned early how to live in the spaces between applause. In college, when I called to say I had been accepted into a cybersecurity program, Grant exhaled into the receiver. So you are still chasing that, he said, as if ambition was a bad habit I should have grown out of. Serena's news landed differently. Promotions, parties, new opportunities. He repeated her updates like headlines. She relayed them to me with a polite kind of pride, detached, almost like she was reading weather reports, something happening but not really affecting her. So no, it did not really surprise me that they held Christmas without me. The pattern stretched back farther than any holiday. It was simply the way our family moved, and the way I had learned to move around them. What did surprise me was the bill that followed. The email with the $25,000 balance arrived less than an hour after the Christmas photo. The subject line was blunt, thrown together, like the number meant nothing to anyone on the sending side. The body was short, written by my father and copied to my mother and Serena. Handle this before the end of the month. That was it. No context, no hello, not even a please. Just expectation. I stared at the message until the numbers on the screen started to blur. Serena had damaged that car before, small incidents, careless turns, scrapes that could be smoothed out. But this was the first time anyone had asked me to pay for something that was not mine. And they did it on a night when I was not worth a chair at the table. My phone buzzed again. Serena this time. Just take care of it. Dad is stressed. It is not a big deal. She always called it, not a big deal, when she wanted consequences to vanish. I flipped the phone face down, the light pulsing softly on the table. Outside, Snow brushed along the balcony railing. Inside, my apartment felt too still, too clean, like a room waiting for a decision I had not named yet. That old familiar ache rose in my chest, the one shaped like all the years I had been the fixer, the responsible one, the person who quietly filled gaps no one else wanted to see. They had cut me out of Christmas, yet they still assumed I would snap back into my old position the second they needed help. Part of me wanted to do what I had always done, swallow it and quietly solve the problem. Another part, the one that had been growing in the background for a long time, just stopped. I picked the phone up again and scrolled through the group thread. Serena laughing at a joke. Elise holding a tray of cookies. Grant carving a roast at the head of the table. My seat empty. My name nowhere on the screen. The holiday looked complete. A knot pulled tight under my ribs, but it was not sadness this time. It was something slower and sharper, like a cold draft moving through a closed room. It was the realization that they had not forgotten me. They had scheduled around my absence on purpose. I inhaled, steady and slow, and let the breath go. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. No reply came. Not anger, not a speech, nothing. I put the phone aside and opened my laptop. The screen lit up, washing the kitchen counter in a clear, pale glow. In that moment I finally admitted something I had never wanted to say, even to myself. They had not erased me by accident, and I did not have to stay written in their story in pencil. For a few seconds, I did not move at all. Snow tapped against the balcony glass, that soft, repetitive sound that usually calmed me. Tonight it just made the quiet feel louder. I logged into my financial dashboard. Rows of numbers appeared, calm and exact, every line a record of years of work my family had never asked about and never believed I was capable of. Contracts, retainers, project bonuses. Every careful decision that had built the life I had now, one they never really saw. I glanced back at the Christmas photo, the empty chair, the car bill, the instruction to handle this. Grant always wrote like that, clipped and flat, no question marks. Like my life existed to absorb impact for everyone else. When I was younger, I would have started drafting explanations in my head, excuses, soft language meant to make their silence less painful. I did not owe them that anymore. The first thing I did was pull up the loan account tied to Serena's car. My name was nowhere on it. Serena's was. Grant's was. Yet somehow, the responsibility had been forwarded to my inbox like a standard invoice. The cursor blinked next to the customer service number. I did not call right away. I reached for a notebook instead and opened it to a clean page. Car loan. Due amount, $25,000. Borrowers, Serena and Grant. My handwriting looked calm. Not furious, just deliberate. On the next page I wrote, Christmas invite list, I was not included. Message sent after dinner started. On the page after that, pattern, my contribution expected, my presence optional. I sat back and looked at those 3 lines. They did not hurt. They clarified. For the first time I could see the shape of the boundary forming in front of me, not with emotion, but with logic. A clean cut. One that had been waiting for me to recognize it. I closed the notebook and the apartment suddenly felt different, less like a hiding place and more like a control room. I opened the drawer by the sink and took out a folder I had not touched in months. Inside were partnership contracts, revenue reports, projected valuations, all the proof of the company I had helped build from nothing. The life no one in my family ever asked about because they never imagined I was capable of building that kind of weight. I spread the papers across the table, lining up their edges until they formed a neat grid. To anyone else it might have looked like work. To me, it looked like evidence. Or maybe a map, showing where I had been quietly moving while they kept me frozen in their old version of me. I did not need revenge. I needed distance. A separation measured in facts instead of feelings. The bank's number flashed again on the screen. This time, I tapped it. Here is part 2 of the rewritten story, same emotional tone, same pacing, same flow. Unique American name kept, Riley Hart, age already stated, 32. No band names used. Story continues smoothly from the exact point you left off. An automated voice greeted me first. Please hold while we connect you. I rested my hand on the cool edge of the counter, waiting. This wasn't anger rising in me. It wasn't rebellion. It was clarity, clean and steady, the kind that settles into your spine and stays there. Finally, a woman picked up. How can I assist you today? My voice stayed calm. I need to report a vehicle for repossession. The owner has defaulted. There was a pause. Then the woman asked for documentation. I gave her everything, loan number, account details, the forwarded email from Grant with all the information they had assumed I'd pay for without question. When she asked for my relationship to the borrower, my answer left my mouth without hesitation. I'm not responsible for the loan, I said quietly. But the borrowers believe I'm still here to fix things for them. A breath. I'm not. Another pause. The kind where the operator realizes this isn't just paperwork. She didn't ask anything else. She simply processed the request, step by step, her voice professional, steady. When she confirmed the repossession order was active, I thanked her and ended the call. It felt like turning off a switch. Clean. Final. No dramatic rush. Just relief. A quiet settling inside me, as if a weight I'd carried since childhood had finally loosened its grip. The apartment around me hummed in its usual soft rhythm. The refrigerator clicked. Snow brushed the balcony glass again. In the faint reflection I caught my own outline. Shoulders straight, hair tied back, eyes clear in a way I hadn't seen in years. I opened my email. At the top of the inbox was a new message from Grant. Transfer the money tonight. Just that, not even a period. Below it, Serena, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I didn't open either one. Instead, I clicked new email. My fingers hovered for a moment, then typed slowly, deliberately. To Grant Rowan CC Elise Rowan, Serena Rowan subject regarding the car I will not be covering the bill. This is not my responsibility. Please handle it directly. I read it twice. Not for tone, but for accuracy. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't emotional. It was factual. Honest. Boundary. Then I pressed send. The tiny whoosh of the outgoing message sounded impossibly soft, but it echoed louder in me than anything they had said all year. I closed the laptop gently and leaned against the counter. The apartment seemed to breathe with me. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like structure, like something that could hold me. I walked to the window and rested my fingertips against the cold glass. Snow drifted down in slow spirals, settling on the balcony railing like quiet pieces of truth. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel second-guessing. For once, I felt direction. A life that wasn't based on fixing someone else's damage. A life that didn't require me to shrink in order to fit. A life where I wasn't a placeholder. I turned off the kitchen light. The apartment fell into a warm, natural dimness. Everything felt aligned. This time, I wasn't patching what they had broken. I was finally choosing myself. Here is part 3, continuing in the same emotional pacing, tone, and depth. Riley Hart remains the protagonist, age 32. No early ending. No summarizing. Pure storytelling flow. Morning light spread across my apartment like a thin sheet of pale gold. I woke to the soft vibration of my phone, steady and insistent, the kind that didn't stop until you faced whatever was waiting. Messages layered themselves across the lock screen one after another, a rising tide of missed calls, texts, and voicemails. I didn't touch the phone yet. Instead, I made coffee. Slow, deliberate. Grounds scooped, water measured, the kind of quiet routine that kept my breathing even. Only after the first sip did I reach for the phone. The first voicemail was from Grant. His voice was clipped, forced into control, like someone stitching fabric that kept tearing. Riley, call me back immediately. The second was shorter. This is not how family behaves. The third one, tighter, thinner, barely holding its shape. There's a problem with the car. Call me. Now. I didn't bother with the rest. I deleted them. One swipe each. No hesitation. A text appeared from Serena next. Words poured onto the screen like she'd typed them all in one breath. What did you do? They came to the house. They're taking it. Dad is furious. This is your fault, fault. That word used to hit me square in the sternum. This time, it didn't land at all. I placed the phone face down and let the silence find its place again. By the time I reached the office in downtown Denver, the late morning sun was slicing through the glass windows like sharpened light. The lobby marble reflected it in pale ribbons. Everything felt cleaner, clearer, almost too bright. Upstairs, the engineering floor hummed with soft conversation and keyboard clicks. Kai Mercer, my co-founder, glanced up the moment I stepped inside. His expression softened slightly. You okay? He asked. I nodded once. Just a long morning. He studied me for a second longer but didn't push. That was something I had always appreciated about him. He didn't pry. He recognized when silence was holding something fragile. We moved through the day like we always did, legal check-ins, product testing, a server rollout meeting. Everything ran smoothly, my mind oddly steady even while my phone vibrated relentlessly inside my desk drawer. By 3 o'clock, I finally opened the drawer. Dozens of messages filled the screen like snow piling against a door. Grant, you owe us an explanation. Serena, I can't believe you would do this on Christmas week. Elise, my mother, sent only one message. Are you safe? I opened hers. Typed a single reply. I'm okay, then closed the phone again. That was the only answer anyone got. Close to 5, I heard the elevator chime. The soft mechanical sound echoed down the hallway, followed by footsteps, quick, sharp, unmistakable. I didn't move. The office door pushed open, and there he was. Grant, face tight, breath sharp. Serena behind him, her expression drawn tight, wounded in the way only guilt can make someone look. Elise trailed behind them, fragile in her silence. He stepped inside without waiting for permission. Riley, we need to discuss this, he snapped. I stayed where I was. My hands rested lightly on the desk. There's nothing to discuss, I said calmly. You had no right, he spit out. You embarrassed us. The words floated in the air before falling flat between us. No, I said softly. I stopped being responsible for the consequences of choices I didn't make. His jaw tightened. Family helps each other. I met his stare. Family invites each other to Christmas. Even Serena winced at that. Even family doesn't send a bill as a substitute for a seat at the table. Elisa's breath caught. Serena looked away. Grant pointed toward the phone on my desk. Call them. Fix this. I didn't look at the phone. I looked at him. I'm done being used. The room stilled. Something in his expression cracked. Not anger, not shock, recognition. The slow realization that he wasn't negotiating with me. He was losing control of someone he thought would always stay quiet, always stay available, always stay small. He stepped back, not physically, but in the way a person retreats when the truth hits too cleanly to argue it. Without another word, he turned and walked out. Serena followed, breath shaky, eyes glassy. Elise hesitated at the doorway, her hand brushing the frame gently. I'm glad you're safe, she whispered. Then she, too, stepped out. The door clicked closed behind them. Quiet. Precise. Final. I stood alone in the office, the Denver skyline stretching wide and steady beneath the fading light. And for the first time in my life, silence didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like authority. Like a voice. Like mine. The apartment was dim when I returned that night. No buzzing phone. No notifications lighting up the counter. No echoes from earlier arguments. Just stillness. A solid kind of quiet that didn't feel heavy anymore, only grounding. I set my keys down and let the silence settle around me. For once, it didn't feel like an accusation. It felt like alignment. I walked to the window, leaning slightly toward the glass, the same way I always had when thinking. The Denver skyline stretched out beneath me with its slow pulse of lights, the night moving gently around the buildings like a calm tide. The city didn't care who I had been to my family. It only reflected who I was becoming. I made tea, letting the steam rise in slow ribbons as I carried the mug out to the small balcony. The air was colder than earlier, crisp and steady, the kind of cold that wakes you up instead of numbing you. I wrapped both hands around the cup and breathed in. There was no triumph inside me. No adrenaline. No explosion of freedom. Just space. A new, quiet, necessary space that had never existed in my life before. I finally had room to understand how long I had been shaped around other people's expectations. How long I had been bending to fill gaps that weren't mine. How long I had mistaken silence for loyalty and responsibility for love. Standing there, I realized something that felt both sharp and soft at the same time. Stepping away wasn't rebellion. It was survival. It always had been. I stepped back into the apartment. Warm light slid across the hardwood floor. A jacket hung neatly on the chair. A small stack of work files sat arranged on the kitchen table. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. Just ordinary pieces of a life that wasn't built on sacrifice. I thought of Elisa's single message from earlier. Are you safe? Of everyone in my family, she was the only one who ever asked questions softly. The only one who ever tried to understand without demanding. But even she had folded herself into Grant's shape for so many years that her voice had become a dim echo of her own. For years, I confused distance with failure. I thought being forgotten meant I wasn't good enough. I thought silence meant I was unlovable. But standing there now, feeling the night air move through my sleeves, I realized something cleaner, simpler, more honest. sometimes distance is the only version of love you can give yourself. A car passed below on the quiet street, headlights sliding across the buildings like a slow-moving spotlight. I watched it disappear without feeling any pull toward the past it represented. There was no guilt in me. No urge to rewind anything. Just a quiet certainty that I had made the right choice. Inside, the tea had cooled. I set the empty mug on the counter and stood still for a moment, letting the simplicity of the night settle into my chest. People think the hardest part is letting go. It isn't. The hardest part is realizing how long you held on to a burden that was never yours to carry. And once that realization hits, everything shifts. Clean. Irreversible. Like a door closing softly behind you. Silence stops sounding like abandonment. It starts sounding like freedom. And I knew, with a steadiness I had never felt before, that this was the beginning of my life, not the pause between crises, not the quiet between sacrifices, not the invisible space between other people's stories. Mine. Only mine. The next morning felt unfamiliar in the best way. I woke before my alarm, not out of tension, but because my mind wasn't carrying anything it didn't need to anymore. No dread, no guilt, no weight pressing into my ribs before the day had even begun. Just calm. I stepped into the kitchen, still barefoot, watching the early light reach across the countertops. It looked different today, almost like the room had exhaled with me. My phone sat on the table, silent for the first time in days. No buzzing, no flashing screens, no guilt disguised as obligation. I brewed coffee and opened the balcony door, letting the cold air sweep in. Denver mornings have a way of reminding you that you're alive, sharp and honest. I leaned against the railing, fingers wrapped around the warm mug, letting the city move at its own quiet pace far below. For once, I didn't feel like I was falling behind anything. When I finally picked up my phone, there was only one new message waiting. It was from Elise. Just a single line. I'm sorry. That was it. No explanations, no excuses, no expectations. And for the first time, her voice didn't sound like it belonged to my father. It sounded like her. I typed a reply, short, steady. I'm okay. I'm building something new. I didn't add anything else. She would understand. Or maybe she wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my job to translate myself anymore. By noon, I was at the office, reviewing a new investor document with Kai. He talked through infrastructure updates while tapping his pen on the table, pausing every now and then to check if I was listening. I was. Fully. For the first time in years, my focus wasn't competing with old wounds. He finished explaining something about database load distribution, then looked at me a little too carefully. You look different today, he said. How? I asked. Lighter, he said. Like you finally put something down. I didn't confirm it, but he was right. After work, I stopped by a small downtown bookstore, something I used to do before life turned into a long hallway of obligations. The owner smiled at me softly, like she sensed I was stepping into a version of myself I hadn't met in a long time. I bought a new journal, the kind with thick pages and a clean cover. That night, I sat on my couch and opened it to the first page. I didn't write about my father. I didn't write about Serena. I didn't write about the house that never made room for me. I wrote about the life I was finally choosing, slowly, intentionally, without apology. A life built by me, measured by me, insulated from expectations that never belonged to me. A life where I didn't have to shrink to be tolerated. A life where silence wasn't punishment. It was clarity and maybe even peace. When I finished the first page, I closed the journal and set it beside my lamp. The apartment was still, warm, quiet. Not the hollow kind of quiet I used to live in. This quiet felt lived in, honest, earned. I stood by the window again, watching the soft glow of the streetlights blur against the falling snow. My reflection looked back at me, steadier than yesterday, stronger than last year, grounded in a way I never expected. There was no version of the past I needed to relive. No version of the future I was afraid to face. Just now. Just me. Just a life finally free from debts that weren't mine. I turned off the lamp, letting the apartment fall into a soft, simple darkness. The silence held me instead of pushing me aside. People think freedom arrives loud, bursting through the door with fireworks and thunder. It doesn't. Sometimes it comes quietly through a decision you make alone in your kitchen at midnight. Through a boundary drawn without anger. Through a truth spoken softly, but spoken fully. Sometimes freedom sounds like nothing at all, and that's how you know it's real.